Hi everyone, welcome to my channel and to this time-lapse version of my boy Django, painted in some of the soft pastels that I made recently in my studio. You can watch more all about that in my other video here on YouTube, but please do enjoy this speedy version of Django's portrait being created. This full-length demo is coming out for free over on my Patreon channel. I'll add links to that in the description below. This is Django, my little rescue dog, and you may have seen my recent video all about the absolute catastrophe he had in my studio. He demolished quite a few of my pastel sticks, and I actually made a video all about gathering up the leftover pigment, all of the dust that he created, and trying to put some of it back together and make some pastel sticks. And here they are. These are the colours that I created from the mess that Django created. But weirdly, he actually created a lot of colours that I ended up thinking, well, that just looks like Django and a green background. And that's what I decided to do. So this piece was all about testing out those big chunky pieces of pastel stick that I made. And I did add a few other colours in so that I could create Django in a good level of realism, so I didn't have all the colours that I needed. But he did a very good job of forcing me to make some colours that really did appear in his fur. So well done to Django for providing some of the extra colours in this piece. And I'm using mostly my unison sticks, and I'm on the Canson Velvet paper this time, a lovely warm tone of that paper. And then of course my homemade pastel sticks are a bit of a mixture, so they've got a lot of unison in them, of course, but several other brands too. So there's some Terry Ludwig's mixed in, some Diane Townsend, several different brands all got crushed together. So in this full-length demo, what I've done to give my patrons the exact colour codes of what I'm using is to find a substitute in the unison range, something that is close to the colours that I'm using. And then of course I am making use of some of my other colours too. And then you will see me pick up some pastel pencil as well. This is not such a big portrait, it's just 10 inches by 10 inches. But I really tried to pack a lot of detail into a small area. As is often the case with a short-haired dog, the coat is quite tricky to create. There is no long fur to hide under. You can see every little bit of structure on his face. And that's what I'm really trying to describe when I'm painting fur. What is that fur flowing over the top of? Is it the angular shape of the muzzle I'm trying to describe? Or the muscles that you can see on the side of his cheeks? And all of that gets described mostly with the direction of the fur, so how it flows over that underlying structure. And I always just find that with a shorter haired animal, there's no hiding from that. You can see every little lump and bump underneath their coat. But for those of you who watched me go through the full process of cleaning all my wrecked pastel trays, gathering up the dust that was left over and making those into pastel sticks again, you may be interested to hear that the pastels I made performed pretty well. They were definitely usable. I had a few regrets, a few things that I noticed. I wish that I had made myself some slightly smaller pastel shapes. I ended up making quite big, chunky pieces of pastel. And it was quite tricky to aim them and to get the level of detail that I'm used to with my smaller pieces. And I probably could have done a slightly better job of mixing the pigment. So if you're doing that, if you're making pastel sticks from your leftover bits and pieces, make sure that you crush and mix all of the pigment really well. Sometimes I would get little flecks of the different colours that had been mixed into the stick. And that's not a terrible thing. I mean, sometimes that's quite interesting. But if I did want them to behave as uniform and as smoothly as my other brands, next time round I would probably try and mix the pigment even more than I did. But honestly, apart from that, they worked absolutely fine. I could definitely use them in my work. I probably won't use these particular ones in client work or paintings that I intend to sell, simply because I did come across quite a few dog hairs and miscellaneous things in there. So these really weren't the cleanest mixture of pastel pigment. I did my best while I was making them, but Django really did a number on my pastel trays. So I'm not sure that I would use these for client work going forward, but I thought it was extra nice to use them in Django's own portrait. And I think he planned this all, to be honest. I'm thinking now that he knew what he was doing. He really wanted me to make these colours and use them specifically on his portrait. I'm now thinking that he's a clever little mastermind, and I'm going to have to watch out in future, as I am clearly easily manipulated by him, so I'm going to have to watch out for this little mastermind. But it was rather nice to make use of these colours and put them straight back into creating Django himself. And it's the first portrait that I have done of him. I always end up painting my own animals. You'll find many demos both here on my YouTube and over on Patreon that are of my own animals. And this is the first one that I've had a chance to paint of him because he hasn't been with us for that long at this stage. And he is an absolute delight of a dog. I really wasn't cross with him at all for having his accident in my studio. It was an accident, he didn't mean it. And even if he had, I don't think I could actually get angry with him. He is such a sweetheart of a dog. And it was quite difficult for me to choose an image that I wanted to paint of him. I think I'm going to have to paint him again because he looks so different when he has his ears up, very perky and alert like he is here. That's kind of like his outdoors look when he's listening to all the noises outside, and he's really G'd up when we're out for our walks. But then the little face that approaches me in the house for a cuddle, when he has his ears down, it's like a totally different, soft expression. So I may have to paint him again. I may have to paint his other in the house expression. And you can have two quite contrasting portraits. But it really took a long time to create his face, just because of what I mentioned about the short fur. You can see every detail of the structure on his face. And then what I loved about this reference image, as always, I really am drawn to reference images that have bright sunlight and really definite cast shadows. So I really like when there's a dark shadow line running across something. I think that's so interesting to depict in the painting. As opposed to a more flat kind of lighting, I just find that you can add so much more contrast and interest when there is light and shade like this. And of course, even in flat lighting, there is light and shade still. It's just a lot more subtle. I really like the sunlight because it creates the very obvious contrast, and it gives you a lot of colour that you can play with. So adding reflected colours into the shadows. So his body wasn't as laborious to create as his face, where we get the most amount of the structure all across his face and the very shortest of the hairs. His body and his neck were a little bit quicker to create. And then the final thing that I wanted to work on, of course, was the collar. So a lot of black used in the darkest areas, and then lovely blue violets and a deep blue purple, bringing that colour from the reflections in his eyes, the reflections on his nose, and now adding a bit of colour on his collar. Even little bits of reflected green from all of the green surrounding him. So a very fun portrait to work on. Lots of interesting colour, interesting light and shade. And that is what I will talk about a lot in this series over on my Patreon. And to celebrate little Django, I decided to release this one in full length with colour codes and narration to everyone over on my Patreon. So you don't have to be a paid subscriber. Come and join me for free on Patreon and you'll gain access to this full demo. But thank you very much for watching this here. If you did enjoy it on YouTube, then as always, please do remember to hit subscribe. I will link here to the video all about making the pastel sticks, and please do check the description for the link to the full demo. But thanks very much for watching, and until next time, happy pasteling.